All right, so hey everyone. So today we're going to be continuing where we left off. We're using SwiftUI Tutorials. Last time we pretty much built out the basic view, but now we're going to be doing building lists and navigation. Just as a reminder, I'll just pretty much show us what we built last time. So we're able to build this basic SwiftUI application, just showing like location here and pretty much some image. I know we're going to dive into more in the second portion. So if we scroll down here, you'll see it mentions, I'll add the link to actually where you can go to actually complete this tutorial too in the description. And as I said, we're going to be doing building lists and navigation. And now next thing it says is with the basic landmark detail view setup, which is what we just showed you, you need to provide a way for users to see a full list of landmarks. So basically we're going to want the user to see a bunch of different landmarks in the screen. So the same way like how you go on Instagram and see a feed, that's all a list. We're gonna have but for each row for this one we're gonna have different landmarks. And it says and to view the details about each location. So basically in that list you'll be able to tap whichever row and you see more detail about it. And then it says, all right, you'll create views that can show information about any landmark, like when you tap on it, and dynamically generate a scrolling list that a user can tap to see a detailed view for each landmark. So just like I was saying with like Instagram or Twitter has a feed and you can see a list of all that stuff and then you can click on it to see more detail. We're going to be doing something basically like that, but for landmarks. And it said to fine tune the UI, you use Xcode to render the previews, pretty much what we did before. Let's just jump right in. We'll just start by downloading the project here, project files, tap this. And then let's just minimize this so we can grab that from our downloads folder. So say buildings, lists, and navigation. And you'll see these bunch of different folders here. You'll see a completed one and you'll see a starting point one. Obviously we're starting this, so let's start with the starting point one. I'll open this. And you'll see the actual Xcode project here and some other files. You can kind of just ignore the rest for now. So let's just open up creating and combining. Actually, not. This will just an open. And now if we start, let's maximize the Xcode project. And if we start to look into it, you'll basically see that it's like basically the project file is what we completed in the previous stream. So if you didn't do the previous stream, or you didn't do the previous project, you can just use it as a starting point. So let's minimize this, and now that we see that this is working, and let's just open back up the browser. And the first section it says we're gonna be doing is create a landmark model, and it says in the first tutorial you hard-coded information of all of your custom views. So what they're saying about referring to there is let's maximize Xcode. And then you see all these parts here inside our content view. And you see inside this V stack that we made last time. We're basically saying that it should be fair to rock just a specific string. And then the name of the park should be Joshua Tree National specific string. So basically every time the user goes into app, they would see this. What we want to do basically is that them to see a bunch of different ones and not just the same park every time. That'll be pretty, and that wouldn't be the best experience. So what they're suggesting then is, like I said, you hard-coded info of all your custom views. Like what we say when we put in those static strings. Here you'll create a model to store data that you can pass into your views. A model now is basically you're gonna kind of combine the data. So this is like a good description they have here. I'll zoom in. Yeah, so basically you see like they have this model here or this name here that says landmark, and then you see all this information under it. Basically what's happening now is that all this information is kind of stored inside one group or one container called landmark. And we can get access to ID, name, image name, all of those by just saying something like landmark.id or landmark.name. So yeah. Now it says use the completed project from the previous tutorial and pretty much continue. So the first thing we have to do is it says drag the landmark data.json into the downloads files, and then it's a resources folder in your project navigation pane. All right, and it says when we drag it in, it will ask us to if we want to copy items if needed, and it said we should check that. and then we should specify the target. So basically which app, like the target. Okay, so let's do that real quick. So it says let's minimize this, and then we'll maximize Xcode on the left. And we don't need the preview right now, so we can hide the canvas. What we're gonna do is inside here, we're gonna go inside our folder or finder, and it says drag landmark data.json in the downloads files from the resources folder. Let's go inside here. We have to go back up a step, and it will be inside this folder. We click on resources, and now we see these two other folders, and we see the JSON right here. So let's just drag this inside our app, and then we'll automatically get a pop-up like this. So you'll notice that this pop-up is different from the one they're showing here in the tutorials. And that's because if you're seeing it my way, that's just because we're using a newer version of Xcode. So we'll see it like this. If you're using an older version of Xcode, you'll see it like how they're showing it here. But if you see this, this is fine. Just make sure copy files to destination is still the action you selected, and you have the target selected. And then just press finish. And I'll maximize this so you can see a look at what this is. So the landmark.json file that we just added is pretty much all this data that we see here, right? So the first one is like, it's representing each landmark. So the first landmark is called Turtle Rock. So this first element, all of this stuff right here, is all about Turtle Rock. And then the next element would be this one right here, which is about Silver Salmon Creek. It has like all the information about Silver Salmon Creek. Okay. So let's jump back to the tutorial to see how they're going to recommend us to use this. So now it says choose file, new file to create a new Swift file in your project and name it landmark.swift. So let's do that real quick. And you see they give like a decent visual example of how to do this. So we're going to jump over here, and then there are a bunch of ways that you can do this, but let's follow their way. So we'll hit file here, new, and then you'll say file from template. Again, you're going to see this experience if you're using the newer version of Xcode. If you're using the older version, you'll still be able to do file, new, file, and create that file. But for us, we have to do file, new, file from template. And just make sure you're on a Swift file, not a SwiftUI file. Yeah, make sure you're using a Swift file, not a SwiftUI file, and then hit next. And they said that we should call it landmark.swift. You don't have to put the .swift part since Xcode will kind of interpret that it's a Swift file. And then we'll hit create. Nice. And now we have this new file created called landmark. And now if I scroll down, it says define a landmark structure. And you have defined a landmark structure with a few properties matching names of some of the key in the landmark data file. So this is what I mean. So basically we're going to create a structure, and it's going to be called landmark, and it's going to have some of the properties from our JSON, right? So what they're basically saying here is that if we maximize this, first thing they said is define a structure. So a structure in Swift, or a struct, is basically any thing that you're creating that starts with this struct keyword right here, struct. And they said that we should call it landmark. So we just put the name of whatever we want to call it here. And for now, we'll just add the curly braces. So right now, just off doing this, we have a struct called landmark. So now the next thing that they were saying is add a structure and within a few properties matching the names of some of the keys in the landmark data. So it says add some of those properties. So what they're basically saying is, so a property is like when you create a new variable or constant inside your struct. If you're not sure what that is, I'll give like an example. So I'm going to open up our landmark data on the side by hitting option and then clicking on it. And this is how you can have like a split view, so you can look at two different files inside Xcode at the same time. So they said we should grab some of the properties from our JSON file that we might want to add. So what I mean by this is like basically see like how we have name here and we have category here. If we want to be able to use our JSON, which is this entire file, but we only want to get certain properties, like certain values from it. So we only want to get, say, the name, we would have to make it that our struct has a way how to use just name. So we'll say something like name, and then we'd have to put colons, and then we have to say what is name. And from the JSON here, we can tell that name is a string. And we know that it's a string because it's between these quotation marks and some type of text. All right, so now all we have to do is say what the type is, which is a string. And I like adding a space here. And that's how we've made it that we've added a property that we want to get from our JSON with the same name. So it might be a bit confusing now, but as we do more, it will make more sense. So I'll minimize this again, and we'll look at what Apple's recommendation for what they wanted to add. So they want to be able to get also the ID. So let's just add that in. And they're using var, so let's stick with that too. So we say var ID, and this is an integer, and this is an int. You see they do it right here. An integer is just like some type of number or whole number that you want to use. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and any of those are going all the way up to infinity. And now they also have name, but you see that we made our name a let, which is a constant, but you can do either, but let's just stick with what what the documentation is doing and make it a var, a variable. I say we have this one for var variable name. Now you could really just copy this, but honestly, to like better grasp and understand it, I'd definitely recommend actually typing it out. So let's add in the other 3 properties that we want. So we want var park. And if this is still a bit confusing, let's just maximize Xcode again. And then we're going to open up hit option and then click on landmark data. And you'll see that we have that name property right here, right? Name, and it's Territory Rock. And then we also have this park property inside our JSON park right here, right? And it's a string, some type of text. So what we're doing now is that basically this landmark struct here will be able to get these type of data that we defined inside our struct. So we'll be able to get for name, we'll be able to get Territory Rock by just saying landmark.name, and then for park, we'll be able to get the park by saying landmark.park, and it will actually give us Joshua Tree National Park. So similar. So whatever we want to get, we'll be able to do it. And then as you see, this one is different. ID, it's an integer. And if we look at what ID is in the JSON, you'll see that we do have ID here, but you notice it's not a string because you see it doesn't have these quotation marks here. It's actually just a number, no quotation marks. So that's why it's an integer. So anything like that. So let's just minimize that. And let's just jump back to the documentation, and then we'll add the other properties that we want. So these are properties. Any new variable that you're adding in that you want to get, that you want the structure to have to. So we'll say var state. And then the last one we'll add is description. And remember, we're matching whatever we have in the JSON. So we do have a property for state, and we do have a property for description, and they're all strings. And yeah, just like we saw before, but just to show you again, let's do that. And again, we'll hit option and click on landmark data. And then now let's look if we see something for state. And see, we do have a property called state, and it gets us a string because as again, it has these quotation marks. Same thing for description here. You see, we do have a property for description in our JSON, this data that we're going to use, and it's marked with these quotations. Cool. So let's close that and minimize Xcode again. And if we scroll down, it says, in the next few steps, you'll model the image associated with each landmark. So it says the next thing is to drag the JPEG files from the project files resources folder into your project assets catalog. So that's a lot of stuff. So let's look at this. So let's open back our Finder, right? And then start our downloads, building list. Yeah, pretty much our building list and navigation again. You'll see that they said that we should, inside the project file, the resources folder. If we go inside here, you'll see that we have a project. We have another folder in here called images. So let's just open this, and you'll see a list. You'll see a bunch of different images that we have here. What we want to do is, as I said, Xcode creates a new image. We want to pretty much add them inside our asset catalog. And they give us a visual here showing how this looks. They see they're inside this assets area here, and then they drag and drop the images, the same images that we have inside this folder here. So to do this, all we have to do is hit assets, go to the assets section in Xcode here. And now you will see that right now we have Turtle Rock from when we previously added it in the previous stream. All we have to do now is actually grab the rest of these images and drag them also inside the assets in this pane. And now you will notice that above you see you now have access to all these different images inside Xcode. So let's close this one, minimize this for now. And then we'll scroll down and you see it's the same thing. So we're inside the assets area, same as we are in Xcode. And we actually have all these images here. And now it says add an image name property to read the name of the image from the data, and a computed image property that loads an image from the asset catalog. So let's see what it's saying to do. Okay. Add an image name property to read the name of the image from data. So we basically just have to update our landmark struct right here. So if we scroll down, they'll give us like a better example too. So you made the property private because users of the landmark structure care only about the image itself. So let's just scroll down. It said next you manage information. All right, so let's look at this. Let's maximize our tutorial again. And let's just scroll up. When we maximize and minimize, it kind of just shoots up the scroll view all the way to the top. Yeah, our landmark model, we have that. And if we scroll down, add encodable. So there's one more update that we need to add, and that's like basically the two additional things that we didn't add to our struct. So hashable and codable. I will add them in just for now, but we'll talk about them a bit more in a few. But basically, this is going to help us to basically make it that we can convert the data that we have inside our JSON to match the data, to match our landmark struct that we have here. So let's scroll down. And it says, add an image name property to read the name of the image from the data, and a computed image property that loads an image from the asset catalog. So let's just add the first thing. Let's add this image name property here. So we'll just copy something like that. And then we're going to add this to our landmark struct. So we'll say var image name. It should just be some string. That's fine. And a computed image property that loads an image from the asset catalog. You made the property private because users of the landmark structure care only about the image itself. Right. So we'll step down again. And then for the image property now, the computed image property, what we could do is say var, right? And we could say image. And they said it should be computed. So what we have to do it a bit different. So we'll say something like image here, right? And then we have to do it like this. And you see it start to complain of saying that it doesn't know what image is. And that's because image here is actually from SwiftUI. We have to use a different framework. You remember how we used MapKit before? That's a different framework. So we have to introduce SwiftUI here. So we'll say SwiftUI. And now it kind of recognizes what image is, but now it's also asking us to return. So let's comment this out for 1 second. And then if we scroll down, what we'll now see is, yeah. So it says next you'll manage information about the landmarks location. It looks like Apple didn't mention the actually show us the visual for adding in the computed image property. I'll just show you how to do that. So we will cut this right here, right? So uncomment that, and then we'll scroll down. And a computed property is basically like a way like this is like a property, our new value that we'll create using some other value inside the struct. So to create an image here, what we could do is say something like image, like have it return image. And then for the name, remember our landmark struct already has something called image name. So we just have to pass this inside here. And now we get rid of that error. Not sure why Apple didn't include that, but basically this is how you create a computed property. So I'm gonna put this here. Computed property. Yeah. All right, so they added in the SwiftUI and handle that. And then it says add coordinates property to the structure using a nested coordinates type that reflects the storage in the JSON data structure. So you mark this property as private because you'll use it only to create a public computed property. So basically they're creating this new struct inside our view right here. Open this up some more. Oh, so you can see it here. So the same thing that we have here, we have a image name. So we have var image name. Only thing is they have it private here, so we can add on the private. And that's because like basically we don't want this property to be able to be changed by anyone or really accessed by anywhere else. And now you see the next thing that it has this computed property that we added already. So var image, it's some type of image, and it returns an image that uses the image name, which is this property here. Since we're only using this kind of inside. The next thing it kind of mentioned, let's close this for a second. I know it says add a coordinates property to the struct using a nested coordinates type that reflects the storage in the storage data. So let's look at how they're handling this. And so this is the coordinates property. So it's just they're making it private as well. It's private var coordinates, and they actually create this coordinates type that they have here is something that they actually created. Here it says struct coordinates. So they're creating like a nested model, if you could say. Let's add the first thing. So let's add private var coordinates. So say skip down here, private var coordinates. And then the type is a type that we don't have right now. So if I type in coordinates, you notice that we'll get an error, and that's because coordinates doesn't exist right now. Right? So I'll maximize this one more time so you can see. So it's saying cannot find type coordinates in scope, and that's because coordinates doesn't exist right now. It's not a part of SwiftUI, it's not a part of Foundation, so it's a nested, it's a custom struct that we created. Our struct, a custom model we created. And you see, this is what they did here. So they say struct coordinates, and they created it here. Let's just start by doing that. So now if we comment this out for 1 second, just by pressing / in front of whatever code you want to just silence or ignore for a second. And if we create our struct, right? If we create a new struct and call it coordinates, right? And then we just leave it blank for now. And then we uncomment out the code that we had here. You'll see that now we don't get this error because coordinates is actually a type now that we created. So if we go back to the tutorial, you see that that's what they're doing. They're creating a new struct called coordinates, and they made it conform to something called a hashable and codable. So these two things are basically a way how you can make it that your struct or model has certain types of abilities. For this one, we want to make it that it has the ability to be able to transform into a different data. It might sound a really crazy for now, but let's just continue. It will make more sense. And then you can see that inside their coordinates struct here, they have 2 additional variables, latitude and longitude. Let's just add those in too. So say var latitude. And you see that this is a new type that we haven't used yet. This is a double. And the reason why this is a double is because like latitude and longitude can have like a 1.0 whatever. To handle that point reference inside it, so I'll give an example here. So you see how it can be like say 71 point all of this, right? Because it has this point and it's not like just a whole number, like just straight up 71 or 72 or 73 or whatever. Because it has this point and it has some decimal numbers, we have to use a double to represent this. So that's why it's different from using an int. If it was just 71, we'd just use like an int. So that's why we're using double. Called latitudes usually are numbers with like a decimal after them. And now let's add in the other one, which is longitude. Scroll up. I'm gonna say var longitude, and this is also a double, which makes sense because latitude and longitudes are usually numbers that have some amount of points or decimal place in them. So that's looking good. Let's just exit this again, and then we'll scroll down. And now let's just look at our model that we have so far. So you see right now I'm getting an error here, and it's saying the error is because it says landmark does not conform to the protocol decodable. And honestly, this should be handled because like we do have codable here, which is basically has decodable abilities in it. But the reason why we're seeing that is because we have a new nested struct inside here called struct coordinates, and this one doesn't conform to codable and hashable. So to fix this, if you're seeing this, and if you look at the tutorial over here, you'll see that Apple is also making them have this conform to hashable and codable, or basically make it that they have the abilities of hashable and codable. Let's just do the same thing here for coordinates. And we're gonna say colon hashable, and then we'll make this codable. And if you scroll up now, you'll notice that you don't see that error anymore. So now let's scroll down, and now it says compute a location coordinate property. Compute a location coordinate property that's useful for interacting with the mapkit. So let's look at how they're handling this. So you see they added this new property called var location coordinate, and it's a type of L coordinate location coordinate 2D. So this is again another computed property. So same way like how we created a computed property for image, which is basically it's not a set value yet. It doesn't have a set value yet. Like this is not a set image yet. What it does is it uses the image name, like another property's value, to create a value. So it used something else to create this value that computed. And they're making another one now called location coordinate. So let's add this new one inside here. Let's look at the actual thing. So now it's actually just, so they added it right below coordinates. So let's just do the same. So it says var location coordinate, and it's a type of CL location coordinate 2D. And if we, for now, just hit enter just to see what this looks like. And I'll maximize Xcode so we can get a better look. The first thing you'll see is even before I add in the stuff here, we're seeing some type of error. And you might be wondering, maybe it's because I didn't add in this stuff here, like CL location coordinate 2, but that's not the reason. And just to show that, I'll copy this for now, and then I'll just paste it in here. And you notice that we still see this error. And the reason for this is because it says it cannot find type CL location coordinate. It doesn't know what this is. It doesn't know what this is. And we know that this one, like before, we couldn't find coordinates because it didn't exist. It wasn't in any of our packages. It was actually a custom one that we made. But for CL location coordinate 2D, this is actually a object type, a type that Apple actually does have. It just isn't inside the SwiftUI framework or the Foundations framework. It's not inside any of those toolboxes. What it actually is inside, it's inside something called import core location. So you see how we had to import mapkit last time in the previous stream? To get CL location coordinate 2D, you have to get import core. We have to use import core location. So let's just do that right now. Core location. And if we scroll back down and maximize Xcode, you see that yeah, we don't see those errors anymore, and we're all set. So let's minimize this again, and then we'll scroll down. We kind of pretty much have the same thing right there. Now it says finally you'll create an array initialized with landmarks from a file. So yeah, So next thing it's gonna say is create a new Swift file in your project and name it model data. Before we do that though, basically for this part where it says finally, you'll create an create an array. So an array is basically um a list of stuff that you have. So you could have a list of strings, and like you'd have the first string all inside a list right here, a bag that's holding all of them. Um, but what they're saying is we're gonna make a landmarks list. So we're gonna have a list, an array with a bunch of different landmarks inside of it stored together. So now if we scroll down here and it says create a new Swift file in your project and name it model data. So again, to do that, let's go over here and we'll hit file, new, file from template if you're using the new Xcode, and we want to create a Swift file. So we hit that and hit next. And then what is it called again? Model data. So hit model data, hit enter. And now what we want to do is create a new struct for this. It says create a load method that fetches JSON data with a given name from the app's main. All right, so let's look at what their model data file looks like. And it says for step 9, what we're going to end up doing is inside model data, for step 9, we're going to create a load function or load method. And this method is going to fetch the JSON data, a given name from the app's main bundle. All that means pretty much is like, we're going to be able to, let me maximize Xcode again. We're going to be able to get all this data that we have here inside landmark.json, all this data about different landmarks, Charlie Rivers, ICB, all this data that looks like a lot. We're going to be able to get all of this inside an array. And when we have all this inside an array, we'll be able to use it as a landmark model, right? That's why we're trying to pick what data from that JSON we want. So we'll be able to have all that inside an array, a list of them. And all we have to do to create that list is they're saying that we're going to have to specify the name of the file that we want to use to create that list. So let's just scroll back over here. And then it says, and now it says, the load method relies on return types conformance to decodable protocol, which is one. Oh, yeah, we already have that in. So it says, now inside model data, right, which is a file we created, we're going to jump back to that model data here. And it says this is their load function. It has something called func load, and it's loading it based on the file name. All this function is really doing is, we're going to copy it, but let me just explain what's happening first. So it's saying we're going to be able to give this function called load a name, right? So we, in this case, we'll give it a name called landmark data, and it will be able to return some type which is of type T. And they put T here. This is one way to do it, but this is something called generics. But basically, this T, what it returns is a type called T, right? And the only requirement is that T must conform to decodable. It has to have the decodable ability. And in a sense, you could basically see T as being our landmark struct that we have here, this, right? So we're gonna remember, we're gonna pass in a file name, landmark data as a string, and then it's gonna return us an array of landmarks like this. And pretty much what's gonna happen is and then the only requirement is that whatever the type that we're returning must conform to decodable. And landmark over here does conform to decodable. Is actually inside codable. So this codable is a way how you can use this if you just want to make it that whatever struct that you created automatically conforms to encodable and decodable right away. Don't worry about encodable right now. So for now, let's just write this out. You can just copy it. I'll write it out so that we can kind of discuss as we go. So we'll go to the model data, right? And then I'll hit enter here, and then I'll say func. By creating the function, I'll say load, which is the name of the function we're creating. And then this part here where it says T, we'll add that in and then say decodable. And then I'll add this name. So this part here, that's some part, it's pretty advanced. I'm surprised they put in this in the tutorial, but basically it's saying this thing called t here, we're gonna use it in our function, our method. But the thing is, t must be any object or struct that conforms, that the decodable has the decodable ability. So now let's write in the other part, and it says this is basically what you need to pass into the function. So the file name. So the file name is definitely just going to be landmark.data, right? And now we say, what do we want it to return? We want it to return a type of t, which is the same, whatever model that here that we're returning, that we make it that it has to conform to decodable, we want to return that type to. So we'll hit there. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fill out the rest portion. So we'll say there is some type in here called data. So we're adding data, right? And now the next portion is that now we're going to actually use bundle.main.url, a file name. All this stuff is doing right here. Let me type it out first. So it's a guard file equal bundle.main.url for resource with extension file name, and then in section, oh, they put nil. All right. And I'll put else here, and now I'll just copy the error message here. I won't copy everything, but just the error message. All right. So let me maximize this so you can better see what I'm saying. So what this is saying is this bundle.main.url, all this is saying is basically we're going to search for whatever file name that you passed in this case landmark data. We're going to search for that file name inside your project. That's what bundle.main.url for resource is doing. It's basically a way how you can check for a specific file inside your project. I feel like they should give it a different name, but yeah, this is pretty much it. So you can put in the name of the file, which would be landmark data. Let me just write it for now. Landmark data, so this makes some more sense. All right. And then you don't have to worry about the extension because Swift will be able to find it. But if you wanted to specify that, you could do something like .json. And that's how we would be able to find if there's a file called that. But say we named it landmark data 2, which there's no file in our project called that, we would basically hit this fatal error, and then we'll get some error message saying cannot find whatever landmark data. So let's just go back, undo that, and we'll put it back to just using the variable, and we'll minimize this. And now we see this error here. This error is because basically we told the function that we should return t, but right now we're not returning any t because we haven't pretty much gotten to that part yet. So now the next step is, now that we have the name, now that we have the actual file, so we passed in the name here, we were able to actually get the file. Now what we want to do is basically convert this to some type of data. So we'll start by saying something like do, right? I'll say data equal dry data contents of, I'll put in file, and in here. So I just want to add this in right now just so we can discuss. And for the fatal error message, let's just grab this one too. All right. So what we're doing here is basically this file that we have here, right? We're basically going to convert this to a type. So if I look at the type of what this is, it's a URL, right? But it's basically the location of like the file, the landmark data file inside our project. What we want to do is convert it to a different type. Now we want to convert it to be like data that we can use. So we don't want it to just be a URL, which it is right now. So remember, file is just a URL. See, I can option click and see what type it is, which is a URL. I want to convert it to be data. So that's the next step. So to do that, we have to say call data, and then you'll see that one of the initializers, how you can create data, is by adding in using some type of URL by saying data contents off, and then just throwing in the URL, which will be file here. And then we can assign this to be data. I remember we created data here, but we didn't really give it a value. And now this try part here that you see, this is basically saying when we're trying to convert the URL to data, it might not work. That's why we have to say try. Basically, it can throw an error. If we try to convert it and it doesn't work, we're gonna get we're gonna go inside our catch block, and then we're gonna get a fatal error, and then basically it's just gonna print out saying couldn't load whatever the file name is from main bundle. And that's why we put it inside. So whenever you see stuff inside a do catch, that's because there's a risk that it could throw an error, and we want to handle it inside. If it does throw an error, we want to handle it inside our catch block here. So now let's scroll down. And now the next portion, what we're going to do is basically, luckily, if this all works, we're able to decode. We're able to transform our URL, our file URL here, to some data type. If that works now is like the final part. We're going to actually transform this to actually be our landmark model. So we're going to, so right now, if I option click on this again, you'll see that it's data, right? But we don't want data. That's not the type we want. We want a landmark. And we want this landmark to have ID information, the name information, the park information, all that, state, etc. So let's do the decoding part. So we'll say again, do, because this function that we're going to call can also throw an error. So we have to put it inside a do catch. See, they also did the same thing. And you see the first thing they use is something called a decoder. So let's just type that in. So we'll say let decoder equal JSON decoder. And we'll make it that it return. We're going to use a decoder now. I'm going to say return try. I'll say decoder decode, and then I'll say T, which is, remember, the type that we have up here that we're passing in, which would be in this case landmark, and it must conform to some type of decodable. So we'll say t.self. We're putting .self here because we're specifying this is the type that we want. And now we're going to actually put what data that we want to transform to this landmark type, or T type in this case. So the data is here. So we're just going to drop this here. So typing data again. And now you'll notice that we pretty much finish up this block, but we're still seeing this error. And that's because this is good because basically we're handling all the success cases and then the error cases up here. But you see, we still have a catch block. So we're going to keep getting this issue because we need to, this error right here, because we need to add in the final catch block to what should happen if we try to decode the data and it doesn't work. So we can do the same thing here and kind of just grab what they're doing for their catch block. And just copy this and then just paste. And now you notice that pretty much all our errors are gone, and we have basically a way of how to load or transform this information here, our landmark data JSON, to be our landmark type that we could use inside our view. So let's close this, and then we'll scroll down. And now the next step, it says create an array of landmarks that you initialize from landmark data. So what they're saying is basically now we're actually gonna create the array. So you see right now, they basically call the load function, which is this function that we pretty much created. And we've added in the name of whatever file that we want to get. And then basically they're saying when we convert all this data, convert it from using JSON decoder, we want to put that data that we got inside this variable called landmarks. Let's look at the whole file. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing they added. So let's scroll up here, right? And then not inside the function, but above it. See, not inside the function right here. Now just type in var landmarks. And I'll put the type of what this is. It's an array of landmarks. That's why you have these brackets here. And then we'll actually call this function, the load function. So call it and just say load. and then we'll just add in the name of what this function is. So we'll say of what the JSON is. So we'll say landmark data.json. And basically this function right here is gonna get called that we just created, and then it's gonna return a type of t, and it's gonna put it inside of this array here. So if we close this and then scroll down, that before moving on, group related files together to make it easier to manage your growing project. So it says this is just like we're just kind of moving around some files. We're not going to really be doing coding right now. Probably in the next step we'll go back to coding. So it says put content view, circle image, and map view into a views group, landmark data in a resources group, and landmark and model data into a model data group. So one thing to note is that like if you're using the new Xcode, you won't be able to create groups. So you see right now it's saying you can create groups of existing items by selecting the item to add to the group and then select file group from the selection Xcode menu. So the first thing they said is like, let's put the content view, circle image, and map view into a views group. So let's just try doing the first one, content view. Let's click on content view. And you notice that when we click on this, we don't see anything for creating oh, actually we do see, I decided selected new group here. And now we're going to create a group for this called views. So we'll say views. And now all we have to do is pretty much just drag content view into this views group here. Nice. Views group. Right. And you can also do it to so we have to do it from here. So inside this views group or folder that we just created, all we have to do, the next thing we added in content view. So the next thing we're going to add in is circle image. So let's just grab circle image here. We're going to put this inside views as well. And then the next thing it said is add in maps view. So let's just grab that, put that inside views as well. Nice. All right, now it says you can create a group of existing by selecting that. Okay. Now it says add landmark data in a resources group. So this landmark data file, JSON file that we have here, we're actually going to put this inside a new group too. So hit new group here, and let's call it resources, which is what they said. And we're just going to drag that landmark data inside resources. So you'll see you'll know if the file is inside it if you see like this indent here. Notice how we have the views folder, and then you see this indent, and that's all the files that are inside this folder. If you want to check again, you can just press the down arrow, and then if you notice that all those files that you wanted to be in the folder aren't showing, that means that they're in there. Let's just do the same for resources too and hide it. And now the last one it says is add landmark and model data to a model group. So let's just create that group. So let's just click on landmark, and then we'll hit right click or double click and we'll create a new group. And actually, let me show you a different way how to do this. So let's delete this group for now. And then we'll click on landmark again. And when we double tap or right click, we're going to click down. Now we're not going to click on new group here. We're going to click on new group from selection. So what it's going to do is basically create the folder and automatically add whatever file we're clicking on inside the group. So you see how landmark is already inside it now. We won't need to do a drag. And I just call this model. And you notice that landmark is inside of it, but it says we should also add model data here. Let's just do that. We'll just grab model data and put it inside here. All right. Now that we have both of them, pretty much, we have a much easier way of structuring like our code right here. We can easily find it. So that looks good. And you see it matches pretty much what they have here. Okay. So now it says create the row view. It says the first view you'll build in this tutorial is a row for displaying details about each landmark. Nice. So this row view stores information in a property for the landmark it displays. So that one view can display any landmark. Okay. And then later you combine multiple rows into a list of landmarks. Cool. So the row view that they're saying is going to be somewhat similar to this. Like the UI is going to look like this. So we're going to create this where there's an image to the left, There's the name of whatever the place is, and then there's going to be a spacer that kind of forces all this to the left side. All right, so now to create this row view, the first thing it says is create a new SwiftUI view. The views group named landmark row. So let's click on our views group right here. And then we're going to, I'm going to show you a different way how to do this, a much faster way. So you're going to press Command N, and that will automatically just open up the file creation panel like this here. And now it's the same thing like doing file, new file, file from template. It's just faster, just saying Command N. And now we're going to create a new file, SwiftUI view called landmark row. So make sure you're not on Swift file here. Make sure you're on SwiftUI file, SwiftUI view, and then hit next. And you're going to type in landmark row, right? And now when you type in landmark row, you basically see the expected boilerplate code right here. Nice. Now it says and landmark as a stored property of landmark row. So what they're saying is, I'll open up the full file. That'll be fine. So you see how we just created this landmark row view here? They're saying that, and it's like the same thing. We have the same boilerplate code, same everything. So they're saying that we want to add a new property to our landmark. So same way like how you know on our model, we're adding new properties like var ID, var name, var park. We're adding new properties here. We're gonna add a new property or view. Let's just jump back to landmark row here. The new property we're gonna add is a type, is gonna be landmark, and it's gonna be a type of landmark, that model that we created. So we'll say var landmark, and then we'll make it be a type. See this quick error that says pretty much there is an issue now with the preview. It says missing argument for parameter. Let me maximize Xcode. It said missing argument for parameter landmarking call. So the reason why I'm saying this is because preview uses whatever view that we're using up here, and it shows us so that we can see it in the canvas to the right. We just added a new property, landmark, to our main view, landmark row view. So we also need to add this to our preview, or our preview won't know what to do because it doesn't match with what we're trying to show. So let's add this in. So we'll say landmark, hit landmark here. And it's going to require us to create path, give it some temporary landmark that we want to show. So how we can handle this is, let's jump back over here, right? Oop. Back. So we'll type in landmark here. Landmark. And if we scroll down, you see the bridge pretty much mentioned in here. It says to fix a preview, you'll not need to modify the preview's view instantiation. So what we're passing in, right? It says inside the preview macro. Macro is this. So you know when you have this $sign and then you have this preview, that's what they're calling a macro. And this whatever is inside here is what the canvas show, you know, that quick preview. And now it says row initializer, specifying the first element of the landmark show. So for them, what they did was, right, for the preview, when it says landmark, remember we have to pass in a landmark. They just do the landmarks 0 to get the first element from our landmark. So let's just do the same thing. 0, right? And this landmarks type that we have here is the same type that we created inside model data. This, right? So remember, landmarks that we created inside model data is an array of landmarks. So to get the first element, if you're new to programming, in programming we count from 0. We start counting from 0 going up. We don't start counting from 1. So to get the first element in that landmarks array, that's why you see they put 0 here instead of 1. If they put 1, they would have gotten the second element. So let's just stick with 0 for now. And now the preview has what it wants. So if I pretty much maximize this and I load the preview, we won't see, we're pretty much just going to see the same text here because this is what landmark row is showing. But I'll just give you the visual. So I'll open the canvas and I'll run the preview. And you see, yeah, we still just see the same hello world because that's all we're showing inside the landmark rule right now. Again, if I should change it to be something else, whatever that is, FDF, we'll see that. Nice. Let's just minimize this again. I'm gonna jump back over to the browser. And now inside the browser, it says with that fixed, you can build the layout for the view. So let's hide our canvas for 1 second. And then fixing. So it says now embed the existing text view in a H stack. So this text that we have here, they want us to put it inside a H stack. Inside a H stack. So a quick way how to do this is just by right clicking. Yeah. To do a couple of, but I guess the easiest way I would prefer is like, say, let's just cut it for a second and then type in H stack here. And then we'll paste back in whatever the text is. Originally had hello world, so let's just add that back in. Well, yeah. And if you look at theirs, they might not show the preview here. It's just some text on the screen right now, which is similar to what we have. Just that now this text is inside an H stack, remember? So anything in an H stack will have the views horizontally aligned. To the right, to the right, to the right, to the right of each other. All right, so now if we scroll down, it says modify the text view to use the landmark properties name. So instead of just having it say hello world, we want to use the property that we added here called landmark. Because remember, in our preview, we're making it that our preview is using the first element. That's why we have 0 here, the first landmark element from the array. So if we do something like that, let's just say a landmark, and then we'll say dot name. And if we load our preview, let's maximize this. And then we load our preview and we open our canvas. You see that now we see Turtle Rock. And I'm not statically typing, like I'm not typing Turtle Rock using like this, you know, like I'm not typing it in like a string or anything like that. What we're doing is we're getting the data, right? From, we jump back to model data, we're getting the data from this array that we created that uses this, that calls this function, that's created by calling this load function, which is the function that we made. And remember, this load function looks for some file, and in this case we're looking for the file called landmarkdata.json. We're looking for that file. So if you open this up, we're looking at all this data right here, and we're transforming it into an array of landmarks by using all the steps that we covered in this function. So when we are able to convert it to an array, like a group of landmarks, what we're doing, again, inside our preview, we're using the first element inside of it. So that's 0. So to get the first element, that's 0. And the first element inside of it, if we look back at the data or JSON, right, is Turtle Rock. This right here. So say we wanted to test and show the second element, say this one, Silver Salmon Creek. Remember, in programming, we start counting from 0, not from 1. So if we wanted to get the second element, instead of doing 0 here in our preview, we would do 1. And give the preview, the canvas, some time to render. And basically, when this finished rendering, our new landmark that we're seeing should be Silver Salmon Creek. That kind of preview takes forever. Let's just hide it for a second and then reopen. And then we'll hit refresh on our preview, pause. And you see, right now we do see Silver Salmon Creek. So basically what's happening, all this data, again, inside landmark data JSON, we have converted it, we've transformed it or converted it to an array of this type, landmark. So we can get the name, we can get the park, we can get the state, we can get the description, or even the image information or the coordinate, all of this stuff, we can get it because we've converted all this text and numbers, JSON information to be just an array of landmarks here by calling our load function that we added here. So let's minimize this again. Then if we scroll down, it said complete the row by adding an image before the text view and a spacer after it. So let's jump back to our landmark row and we'll hide the canvas again. And it's saying that we want the image, remember this is inside a H stack, so it will be, things are being aligned to the left to the right, right? So what we're doing now, we want to make it that we have the image to the left and then we have some text to the right. But to do this, you can see all they're doing right here is just saying landmark.image. Remember, we added the image property, the computed property here. So jump back to our landmark model, and you can see that image returns some type of image. Remember, it's a computed variable based on whatever the name of the image is. So whatever name that we added inside for any of these images inside our assets. So if we jump back and we say, let's just do that. So we'll say, give the space because we want to have the image here and then the text here. So we'll say landmark. Oh. Yeah, landmark, right? The image, right? So now we have this as an image. And we're gonna use a couple different modifiers for our image. So before I do that though, let's see what it looks like just with it. So we're gonna open our canvas again. And it's loading, it's about to come up. Okay, so now right now you see we do see the image that we added. And we see it right next to the right of it, we see the name. So again, it's inside a H stack, so they're aligned left to the left or right. Versus vertical would be going up or down, going down. So now if we minimize this again, since we can see what our preview would be showing, we can hide the canvas now. And you can see that there are two modifiers that we had here, a resizable modifier and a frame modifier. So we used the frame modifier before, but I don't think we've used resizable yet. Remember, modifiers are just a way how you can add like extra abilities or changes to some type of view. So the first one we're going to add, as they mentioned, is resizable. And this is a modifier you add to images so that you can actually change the height or the width, any parts of the frame. And now below that, we're going to add frame, width, height. And then for the width, I'm going to say 50. Then for the height, I'm going to say 50. Nice. And now let's look back at our preview. I'll maximize this and then I'll load our preview by going here and then hitting canvas. And then as it loads, okay, you see that the image now is much smaller. It's much easier to follow. It kind of looks like what you would expect a row to look like inside like some type of list. So let's minimize it again. And now let's look at what their preview looks like. And it's pretty much the same thing. Only thing that ours is centered while theirs is more over to the edges of the screen, which is fine for now. So now the next thing it says is customize the row preview. All right, so it says Xcode automatically recognizes any previews that you declare with a preview macro. So I'll hide this because that might not make sense. And it says the preview macro again is this portion right here, the $ preview. And then anything that we want to show inside the canvas, so here is, well, inside that preview is where we'd have it. And I'll minimize our canvas a bit. So you see how right now we're showing this. This is all based on whatever is inside our preview. Again, if I should change this from being the second element to say being the third element, you'll notice that it changes the checkout trail and the images support. So whatever we're showing, whatever we want to show inside our canvas over here, we have to add that view inside our preview. Not just having it up here won't exactly affect this. It will, but not exactly. So let's minimize our canvas again. And now it says the canvas displays only one preview at a time, but you can define multiple previews and choose among them in the canvas. Alternatively, you can group views together to create a single preview, more than one version of it. So now it says add a second preview macro that uses the second element in the landmarks array. So we kind of are really ahead of this, but let's just see. So it says to add a second preview, we literally just type in $preview, right? And now they're saying that they want the next one to be second element. So all we have to do, let's scroll down. Let's start off by setting back our original preview to be the first element. So setting that to 0 since we start counting from 0, not 1. And then let's add in the second preview macro that they mentioned. So we'll say $preview. Okay. And now that we added in that preview, yeah. So now that we added in this preview here, right? The next thing they said is basically add a second preview that uses the second element in the artmark. So they say we want this next preview to use the second element. So let's just do that. So we'll say landmark row. And then remember it requires a landmark now. And now we're gonna get the second element. So we'll say landmarks and do 1. Again, we start counting from 0. So 1 would be the second element. So let's load up our previews just to see what this looks like with 2 previews added. Open up Canvas. And now the first thing you notice, you see how we have 2 different panes up here now. So we have one for that says line 24, and then this is our second preview that we just added. And we have another one that says line 20, and this is our first preview we added. So if we click on each of them, you see that the first one, line 20, is showing the first element. Remember, turtle rock, and we're using 0, right? And if we go to our data and we go to what's the first element called? Turtle rock. So that's correct. And now let's look at what the second one is going to be. It's supposed to be Silver Salmon Creek. So if we go back and we look at the preview for the second one, it should say Silver Salmon Creek. So line 24. Line 24 is this preview. You see it does say Silver Salmon Creek. So I guess this is a way how you can quickly see different versions of what your view might look like with different types of data inside your preview. So I'll minimize this and we can hide the canvas 4 now. And then it says use the controls in the canvas to choose the second preview, which is what we just did. And it says by default, the canvas label previews using the line number they appear on. That's what we checked. All right, so it said the preview macro takes an optional name parameter that you can use to label a preview. Okay, let's do that. It says give each preview a name to help distinguish between them. And it looks like all we have to do is just add in some type of string for the initializer for our preview macro. So let's do that. All right. So let's add in the first one. So they said the first one should be Turtle Rock. So let's add that in. So we'll go over to our preview. Yeah, we'll go over to our preview here and we'll start by creating the initializer. So we're going to call this, like I said, Turtle Rock. Right. And it's only doing 1. I said give each of them. So let's just make this one Salmon Creek too. Let's add both of them. Let's say Salmon Creek. And now if we maximize this and then look at our canvas here, all right, you'll notice that at the top here for each different preview, it now has the label that we added. So Turtle Rock here, Salmon Creek. And just to test this, I always recommend adding in your type of strings that you might be considering. So I'll just type in some stuff. And as the preview loads, you'll see changes to that name that I just added. So, but for now, let's just comment that, undo that. And now the next thing is it says give each preview a name, which we just did. Now it says navigate between the 2 preview panes with the new labels. Try changing the selected preview again. We just did that, but it's just pretty much like up here, the different panes. You click on this one to see this preview, and you click on Salmon Creek to see the Salmon Creek preview. Nice. Now it says when you want to preview different versions of a view side by side, you can instead group them together in a single collection view. Okay, this sounds good. It says remove the second preview and instead wrap the two versions of the row in a group. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Hide canvas there, right? And it says get rid of this second preview that we added, right? And we're gonna put both of these potential views inside a group. So let's grab this right here. Let's cut it. And then we're gonna get rid of the second preview that we have here. And then inside here, right, I'm gonna first create some type of group. I'm gonna drop in the last one that we added, and then I'm gonna grab the one that was originally here and just put it on top of this. Let's see what this looks like. Let's open back our canvas, right? And while that loads, we'll look at what Apple is saying that this should look like. So you see it kind of looks, both of them are showing, but they're kind of to the edges of the screen. If yours looks like this, and it's kind of centered like this, it's fine. It's just some extra styling that Apple might have added on their side. So if you have it like this, that's fine. So now let's minimize, let's hide our canvas. And now we know how we can see both previews in the view at one time by putting them inside a group and then specifying pretty much the view we want to use. Nice. So now it says the code you write in the preview only changes what Xcode displays in the canvas. So it says create the list of landmarks. It says when you use SwiftUI's list type, you can display a platform specific list of views. The elements of the list can be static, the child views of the stacks created so far, or dynamically generated. You can even mix static and dynamically. So basically we're going to create a list right now. So basically we're going to have a way how we can see each element inside our data here. So we'll have a list that shows the first element here with Turtle Rock and some of this detail right here, right? And then the next row will have this detail, right, for Silver Salmon Creek. And then the third row in the list will naturally have Chilcot Trail Nation. So to do this, I guess we're going to jump into it. This first thing it says is create a new SwiftUI view in the views group named landmark list. Let's just do that. And again, we're going to start using Command N for creating new files. So let's click on our views here. And then we're going to say Command N, and this automatically pops up this view pane here. And then make sure you're on a SwiftUI view, not a Swift file, and make sure you're inside the iOS platform, not macOS. Make sure you're in iOS. Then click next. And then we're going to type in landmark list. Right? And again, you know, as you must be used to this by now, we get this boilerplate code saying pretty much hello world. We'll just scroll down and it said replace the default text view with a list and provide landmark row instances with first two landmarks on the list. So let's do the first part. So it says replace the default text view with a list. So this text view that they have, which we get by default, we're going to put in a list instead. So we'll say list here, right? And then we'll just say this. We'll just have it open with the curly braces, right? Okay. So now that we have this, it says provide landmark row instances with the first two landmarks as the list children. So you can see all they're saying is the same thing that we're kind of doing where we're using checking the row. We're going to put each of those rows inside here. So we'll say landmark row. It takes in some type of landmark, right? And then we're going to use the same thing that we're kind of doing with the previews. They were just kind of getting us prepped. And we want to use the first element for this one. So we'll say 0. And I just want to show you what this looks like before I add in the second one. So let's maximize. And then we're going to go over here. The canvas, excuse me. And while the preview loads, basically we're going to see what list does. This is the first thing is that list kind of shows this. The list, it has whatever the row view that we created. Remember the row view that we were just in forever over here? We're using this now inside our list. So now it has like an appearance, like, you know, like you might be looking at a feed, like on Twitter, Instagram, etc. All of them. Now, look at what would happen if I try to add another row here, right? But I want this to be the second element. So you see, now we have a better appearance. It's starting to look like a list based on these rows that we created. So if I should say add another one and say make it the third element, and I change this from 1 to 2, see that now we have this list. And with the preview, you can actually start kind of scrolling to get that functionality already. So let's cut it back down to just 2, because I think that's what the tutorial was saying that we should. So we'll hide the canvas here. And let's look at their preview. So pretty much the same thing like what we had, right? Let's look at ours and just compare it. You know why I made the preview this right here. Okay, and you see, same thing. So we have Turtle Rock, Silver Salmon Creek, and it looks like the same thing right there. So let's just hide this preview, and then we'll hide our preview too. Now the second part it says is make the list dynamic. So it says instead of specifying list elements individually, like what we're doing here, we're saying landmark row should be this, and then landmark row should be 1. If we kept doing this, what if the list has 1,000 elements in it? We don't want to write 1,000 landmark rows. We don't want to do that. So they were gonna show us how to do this dynamically. So it says next thing it says is you can generate rows directly from a collection. That collection will be like some type of array, right? And remember, we already have an array that we could probably use, landmarks, which is an array of landmarks. So what we want to do is eventually use this array, the array of landmarks inside our list, or with our list. So it says next, you can create a list that displays elements of a collection by passing your collection of data. So basically passing our landmarks to this list, and a closure that provides a view for each element in the collection, which is our closure is pretty much this that we have right here. And then inside of that list, we're passing in the different landmark row views. The list transforms element in a collection into a child view by using the supplied closure. So you see right here, it's creating, so based on the list data that we have here, we're creating each row that's here. We have Turtle Rock, we have Silver Salmon Creek, we have Chillicothe, just like that, like we were doing. So to do this, the first thing they said is remove the static landmark rows, right? And instead pass the model's data landmarks array. So instead of these static landmark rows that we were doing, remove them, right? And what we want to do is use the model's data landmarks array. Remember this over here, model data, and this landmarks array that we created, which is a type of array of landmarks. We're going to use this to get it. Remember, we're getting that data by converting all the data inside landmark data JSON to an array of landmarks. So that's looking good. So now to do this, you can see all they do right here is passing landmarks as a parameter for the list. So say that landmarks, right? And then ID. Then we'll mark it as ID. Then we'll say a landmark in landmark in. So basically we have this now, right? Now if we run the preview, we're not going to see anything because we're not actually putting in what view we want to show here. What we might see though is like an empty list of stuff. So let's look at that. You might just see an empty bunch of rows with nothing in them. So let's roll the preview. It didn't even show that one. So because we don't have any data in here. So what we can do then is basically start using our landmark row view. So let's scroll down and you see it says complete the dynamically generated list by returning a landmark row from the closure. So remember how we were just doing landmark row and then we were passing in landmarks bracket 0, like basically how we were doing landmark row, landmark, and then would be like landmark 0 or then 1 or whatever to see that. And I'll show you again in the preview what this looks like. You see how we're doing that and just doing it, like showing it for statically doing it. Like this is just only going to show the first one. Oh, so we see all of these. because we're using the entire list, but we're seeing the same data, which is not what we want. But we want to make it that each row has its own unique data based on the actual JSON landmark data file. So you see right here, what they're doing is they're called the actual landmark row. And then for the landmark parameter, instead of saying landmarks 0 like this, or landmarks 1 or landmarks 2, we're actually passing in this landmark parameter to it. Let's do that. Let's say landmark. And what this does is like basically the list is already going through our array, right? This landmarks array. And it's going through it, it's handling it, and now it's saying for each landmark that's inside this array, what kind of view do you want to show for each? And for that, we want to show a landmark row. So if we open our canvas, I will open up theirs too. You see, this is what it's supposed to look like. And let's just wait while a preview loads. And you see, we get the same experience too. Turtle Rock, Silver Salmon, and it's all different. And with lists, we automatically get the ability to scroll. So now we can just close this, and we will hide this. We'll hide our canvas, and then scroll down. And so next, use simplified list code by adding identifiable conformance to the landmark type. So right now we have to add this portion here. It's like .id. But to simplify it, it says switch to the landmark.swift and declare conformance to the identifiable protocol. So let's just do that. So go to landmark, and you see, you remember how we had to add in hashable, how we had to add in codable. Those are protocols. Like, so if we want certain abilities to do certain things, we need to make it that landmark has the ability for hashable, has the ability for codable. And now they're saying we need a new ability or conform to a new protocol called identifiable. So to do that, just hit comma and then hit identifiable. And now, if we scroll down, you see that that's what they did here. They just added in this new conformance. And if we click on the file, just see, make sure that's the thing they added. You can see that, yeah, that's the only one. And now if we scroll down, it says switch back to landmark list.swift. Right? And the first thing it says is remove the ID parameter, because now that the model is identifiable, it has the identifiable protocol, you don't need to specify the ID right there for the list, so we can get rid of that. And if I should look back at the preview again and hit canvas here, right? We now see the same list that we were expecting. It's just less code and easier to read. Hide this. And then we'll scroll down. All right, now the next thing that it says is set up navigation between list and detail. So right now we're able to see all that list, but if we click on them, nothing happens. What we want to do is add some way how we can make it that we can go to a different screen. So the next thing it says is set up navigation between list and detail. So it says the list renders properly, but you can't tap an individual landmark to see more detail about it. Now it says add navigation abilities to a list by embedding in a navigation split view and then nesting each row in a navigation. So let's scroll down and see what's going to happen is you see from this visual here, I'll maximize this one out. Just lost it. I don't know why the visuals disappear when we do that. So let's just go back to this. But you see from here, from this list, whenever the user is gonna click, what we want to do is whenever the user clicks on like any row, we push them to the screen that we created in our previous stream. And this will have all more information, because we can't have all the information on this list screen. Look how much information for one view is there. There's a name, there's a category, city, state, ID, is featured, is favorite, and then this huge descriptions block. We can't show all that on the screen. All right, we could, but it wouldn't be a good experience. So let's scroll down and let's look at how we can make it that we can click on a row and push to a different screen. So the first thing it says is prepare a detail view using the content you created in the previous tutorial, which is this screen right here. So this is going to end up being our detail screen. So it says create a new SwiftUI view named landmark detail. So we will jump to views up here, and then we'll click Command N. It's going to be a SwiftUI view. We'll hit next, and then we'll say landmark detail, right? And then just hit create. Hit create right there. And now, as usual, we get the same boilerplate code, text, hello world, etc. And if we look at their preview, it's the same thing too. So close this. And now it says copy the contents of the body property from content view into landmark detail. So we're going to copy all the code that was used to make this screen here, which is inside content view right now from our previous stream. And what we're going to do is put it inside landmark detail view. Let's do that. So let's go to content view, right? And then it says copy everything that's inside the body. So we'll copy this. And then I'm going to jump back over to landmark detail view. And I'm going to replace what we have here for text with this. I wonder if I missed the curly brace. Now, let's look at our preview. What this is looking like. It should pretty much look like the previous view that we had. So load for the wait for the preview to load. And you see, yes. So landmark detail view now gives us this view. This is what we created in the first stream. So let's hide that. And now it says copy the content. If we scroll down, you see it's the same exact thing. So and I look at their preview, same exact thing. So it says now change the content view to instead display landmark list. The content view isn't gonna just display the detail view anymore. It's gonna display landmark list, what we just created, this right here, right? Let's just go over to content view. And again, we're gonna cut this stuff. One thing though, with SwiftUI views, the curly braces can get really hard to follow. So let's make sure you grab the right one. Let's just scroll all the way up and let's just cut that V stack, right? And now we're gonna paste in landmark list view. And we should be good. And now, if we look at their preview after doing this, it's just gonna be the same list that we had. If we open our canvas, it's the same list that we had. Okay, the same list that we have here. Nice. So if we close this now, let me just grab my charger, put this in here. Nice. Gotta keep the MacBook charged up. All right. So now what we have here is landmark list, right? So we can hide our preview of landmark list. So you say hide canvas. And it says in the next few steps, you add navigation among your list and detail views. So what it says now, it says embed the dynamically generated list of landmarks in a navigation split view. All it's saying is put landmarks list inside another view, and this another view is called a navigation split view. And then just some information about this. It says the navigation split view takes a second input that's a placeholder for a view that appears after someone makes a selection. So if you click on something, then it pushes to the next screen. And it says on iPhone, the split view doesn't need the placeholder, but on iPad, the detailed pane can be. So we're gonna make it that we're using a navigation split view so we can handle both better for iPad and iPhones. So let's look at what they did here. So they pretty much just wrapped all our stuff here inside landmark list view, inside a navigation split view. So just make sure you're inside landmark list view, not content view right now. Landmark list view. And then for the list, we're gonna wrap this inside a navigation split view. And we can look, so let's look at the preview. It might just be a visual. Yeah, not much difference. So what we're gonna do here is just start typing in navigation split view, right? And then we open those curly braces, and then we're gonna copy what we had here for the list, cut it, and then paste it inside navigation split view. Oh, so it's requiring us to have some type of detail. So let's see. Look at preview again. And now it says add the navigation title modifier to set title of the navigation. So Okay, so we get this navigation split view, but it's asking for a detail. So let's see. Right now, you might be seeing this error, and that's because what's happening here is we need to add this additional parameter here called detail right here. So make sure you have this. So look at where your navigation split view ends, which is right here. And now you will type in detail, because this is another parameter for this. And inside here, they'll say text. Type in text, and you'll say select a landmark. Right? Now we're wrapped inside. Now we have our list, right? Inside a navigation split view, and the detail screen will say select a landmark. So let's just hide this. And we can look at the preview. And we don't really see this mentioned here. If we load our preview too, it should just look the same too. So run, open our canvas, give it some time to load, get that, and you see the same thing. If we were using, hey, thanks for subscribing. Now, if we were using, say, an iPad, we'll be able to see that detail. So let's scroll down. And now the next thing that we're saying is it says add the navigation title modifier to set the title of the navigation bar when displaying the list, right? So add the navigation title. Okay, so we want to add a title to this. You see that for the title, they basically just added this on the list. You know what I mean? We added a modifier to the list, not to the navigation split view. Thanks for subscribing. Appreciate it. And then for the list, what we're going to say here is dot navigation title. And then we're going to give it some type of title. So if you try, right now I'm using the one that takes in a text, but you can see that Apple is using just the landmarks, the straight up one that accepts a string. So let's just try, it might flag us, but let's see. It actually just took the string. Nice. So this is good. So what we're gonna do now is let's look at the next step that we have to do. Let's look at the actual preview. So the preview has the landmarks up here, and we have all this list information right below. So what we're gonna do is look at our preview. So we'll say open canvas. And now we see experience that matches the same thing that we have over here. We have the landmark title here, and we have the landmark title here. One thing as again that I recommend is like whenever you're adding in like whenever you're doing like tutorials like this, try to add in like your personal flair to it. So instead of adding landmarks here, you could add something else, or you could even add like an emoji. So to do this, I'm gonna say Control Command Space, and now I'll get access to all our emojis. I'm gonna add in something in here. I'll add in like some type of volcano. And now if I load the preview, give it some time to fetch and update that view, you will now see the volcano right here beside the title. So I highly recommend whenever you're doing tutorials, try to add like your own flair to it. Grasp, it helps with better understanding too. So now what we're going to do, if we scroll down, it says inside the list closure, wrap the returned row in a navigation link. So pretty much inside this row here, so you see where we have landmark row, we're going to put this inside a navigation link. Check that inside the list closure. So when we do this now, you see that all they did to do that is like for landmark row, put it inside a navigation link. So let's do the same thing. And this is going to kind of control how we get pushed to the next screen. So what I would recommend for doing this, I'll maximize this for now, is that instead of just having landmark row here, right? And trying to have it fit inside of, I just cut it for now. And now we're going to type in navigation link, right? And make sure you're going to see a bunch of these. So you'll see navigation link just appear with nothing. You'll see one that says title key. The one you're looking for is the one that is like this, that takes a destination and a label. So now just hit destination label and open it like that. And then remember the same view that I just cut? For the label section here, I'm going to paste landmark row there. And now for the navigation link section, we're going to paste our landmark detail here. So say landmark detail. detail. Nice. And let's just look at what our preview looks like. So we'll hit this, hit canvas. Give that some time to load up our preview. And now you notice that we see these arrows here, right? That's all because of the navigation link. So now we can click on these and it will push us to a different screen. So one thing you're gonna notice that like I just clicked on the Turtle Rock one, so I'd expect this. But if I click on Silver Salmon Creek, I don't want to see Turtle Rock. But if I click on it right now, we are still seeing that. So what we're gonna do, you remember how we had to update landmark row to take in a landmark? We're gonna have to do the same thing for landmark detail. But we're getting too ahead, so let's jump back to the tutorial and let's discuss it some more. Now, if here, you can see that we say you can try, oh, let's look at their preview too. This is the same thing. They have these arrows here. If it was a GIF, you'd be able to click on it and then see the new screen it navigates to. Now it says you can try out the navigation directly in the preview. Tap a landmark to visit the detail page, which we did already. And now it says pass data into child views. So we're at the section 7, pass data into child views. What it says now, it says the landmark detail view still uses hard-coded details. Remember, let's go inside of it. The reason why we keep seeing Turtle Rock every time is because inside landmark detail, we're literally just typing in Turtle Rock. We're literally typing in the name of the park. We're typing in the exact name of the state. So we're gonna see that every time when we try to go to landmark detail from inside our landmark list. Remember, we're going to landmark detail whenever our row is clicked. So, and if you look at row, remember, we were using static data in here before, but now we switched to using just a model. So landmark dot name. So that's why you see each row is different. So more than likely, for landmark detail, we're gonna have to add a property like this, like how we added for landmark row to landmark detail. But let's not get to it. Now it says the landmark detail type and the views it compromises needed to use a landmark property. And use a landmark property as a source of their data instead of just having it static like this. So it says starting with the child views, you convert circle image, map view, and then landmark detail to display data that's passed in rather than hard coding. So basically, for you to put all these views, map view, circle image, those nested views are in here, and then all this data right here, we don't want to have it statically done. We want to pass in the data so that we can see different locations. So basically the same thing that we did for landmark row here by passing in, making it accept some type of landmark. So now what we're going to do is scroll down. And it says so the first step is in the circle image file, add a stored image property to the circle. And it says circle image structure. So it says this is a common pattern when building views specify. So we're gonna pass in values. So for this one, for circle image, they're gonna make this a bit different. So they're gonna say, they said that this requires a property called image, and it's of a type of image. So the name of the property is image, and the type that image is image. So let's add that in. So we're gonna say, and I'm gonna say var image. And I'm going to type an image here. Right. So we're saying this circle image view now requires that you give it a type of image whenever you use it. So it's a bit different, it's slightly different from how we were doing it in landmark row, where landmark row requires the actual landmark struct. For circle image, we want it to only require an image. So you can make it that your reusable views require whatever type that you want it to really require. And then the next thing is, you see our preview already complaining, and they pretty much mention it here, but the next thing that they said is, instead of doing image right here, they said let's look at the file. They said that we're just gonna, since we're passing in the image, instead of just doing image Turtle Rock, what we want to do is use the image type that we're gonna pass in, that will be passed to it. So replace this with image, and then inside our preview is going to be complaining. Let's just close this and look how they handle it for our previews. It says update the previews to pass the title, the image of Turtle Rock. So to do this, remember the preview is using whatever view we give it, and right now it's using the circle image. Scroll up. Yeah, so the preview, this preview macro right here is using whatever image we give it, whatever view we give it, and right now it's using the circle image. But right now, remember, we just made it that the circle image requires an image property, like it requires an image parameter or whatever. So we have to update the preview to also include that. So let's just start by typing image. I see kind of autofills first, and then we'll give it some type of image. And the one that they recommend is Turtle Rock, so we'll go with that. Turtle Rock. Remember, that's the image that we have inside our assets folder. This one. So if we load this, it's gonna be the same thing because we were using Turtle Rock before. So if we load it again and look at the preview, we'll see the circle image, but it will be represented using the Turtle Rock image, which is kind of what we had before. So it's giving this error right now, and that's because there's basically an error happening at a higher level where this view is being used. So now what we could do is, okay, so they're not handling it yet. What we could do is jump over to our landmark detail view, and you'll see here where we're actually calling circle image, right? And you see that it's also complaining that it requires something new. I'll maximize this so you can see better. I see it's saying, it says it right here. It says missing argument for parameter image in call. So same like what we did for the preview. Let's just add in that image that it requires. And for now, we're gonna stick with Turtle Rock. Eventually what we're gonna do is basically make it that we can get the image from the landmark variable, but I don't want us to go too far. So now if we go back and then we minimize this and we scroll down, the next step it says is we're going to modify the map view. So it says in the map view file, add a coordinate property to the map view structure and update the preview to pass a fixed coordinate. So just like how we added a new property for circle image by adding that it requires a var image and it has to be able to type image, we now are going to do the same thing for map view. So if we go over to map view and then we scroll down, you see that right now we want to add a new parameter, and this is going to be a coordinate parameter. So now we'll say var coordinate, and it's going to be of type CL location coordinate. If you're having some error right now saying that it doesn't know what this is, then more than likely you need to import MapKit. You need to get all the tools that MapKit offered, so you need to import it. If you're not having any errors, that's good. All right, so now let's scroll down. We look at the full file. I think this is the only change they added. Oh, they updated their preview too. So let's just do the same. So again, our preview is trying to show our map view. I remember we updated our map view to require a coordinate now. So we have to do the same thing for our preview. So a quick way to do this is just click on that button right there and then scroll down to fix, click fix. And now for the coordinate, we have to pass in some type of coordinate. So let's just use this one right here that they have inside the preview. So let's just copy this right here. And then copy. And then we're just going to paste it inside as a coordinate that we're going to use. And now our preview will work based on this coordinate that we gave it. So if we load the preview, it won't be any real difference since we're kind of just passing in the same coordinate that we're using. But the main thing is, again, this issue is because we're seeing an error happen. A nested view where we're using this, again, remember, hide this. Inside our landmark list where landmark detail, right? Our map view is still just using is not using the new coordinate parameter that we have. That's why you see it's flagging here, and that's why right here we had to add image. So we'll hold on adding this and continue with the tutorial for now. So we can, because I'm more than likely Apple is gonna give us the opportunity to that. So we're going too deep ahead. Alrighty, so now that map view now has this coordinate property that it requires, next thing it's going to say is pass the coordinate to the center parameter in the region variable, right? So inside map view, let's jump back to map view. It says, you remember this region property that we're using? And we're using this region property to show a specific location on the map. What we want to do then is, since we're going to get a coordinate, which is a CL location coordinate 2, passed into the map view, we don't want to hard code the location anymore like this, right? What we want to do is use the coordinate that we get. So we'll just pass in coordinate here, and that will handle for that. So now, and now the next thing that it says is change the map's initializer to take one that takes a position input so that it updates when the value changes. So right now we're doing like initial position, but we want to make it that if the value changes, it updates. So we're, instead of doing that, we're going to say remove this. I'm going to type in position and then just type in dot constant, because this is a binding variable. We'll talk about bindings pretty much later. And then we'll put region. And then we're going to throw in the region that we created previously from the previous stream. And now the one that's it's actually using a coordinate from that were passed in. That's good. And we can look at the actual Swift file too that they have. I see that's the only change right now. So we can close this, scroll down. And now it says the in landmark detail, add landmark property to the landmark detail type. So inside landmark detail now, we're going to go here. And remember, we changed both map view, circle image to both need properties passed to them. Map view, it needs what we at the coordinate parameter, and circle image we temporarily filled this out, but it needs an image parameter. So now they're saying, where are you going to get this stuff from? So we're going to get this from each landmark in our landmarks array. So the first thing it says is in landmark detail, which is where we are now, add a landmark property to the landmark detail type. So just like how we did for circle image, we're adding a new property to landmark detail. It's going to be var landmark of type landmark. Excuse me, I'll say landmark and we'll set it to be a type of landmark, just like that. And now what we can do is actually pass in the values that we might need to it. So they're not doing it yet. See, right now they have their map view not requiring it, and they have our circle image still not requiring those parameters. So right now, if you're following this exact, you should be seeing some errors. More than likely, you're seeing an error here, and then you would be seeing, if you're following me exactly, you won't be seeing an error here. But if you're not, you would usually be seeing, I'm gonna just temporarily delete that, and you're gonna notice that we eventually see an error here for circle image. Taking forever. Yeah, let's go back. But you might be seeing an error here, a map view, and an error here for circle image, and that's because we're not giving it the parameters that it needs here. Apple's taking its time, so let's work with them. So now what it says is basically inside landmark detail, see, you're not adding in this parameter yet or this parameter. So if we close this and scroll down, it says in landmark list, pass the current landmark to destination, landmark detail. So we're going to leave the errors in here just for now. And then we're going to jump back over to landmarks list. And it says inside landmark detail, right? We're going to make it, remember we made it that this requires some type of landmark property or parameter. So now we have to make, since we're using landmark detail here, we have to also pass in this parameter. So let's start by, let's unmaximize this. Oh, wrong button. Yeah, so I'll maximize this. And then I'll type in landmark because that's the required parameter. And then remember, we're iterating through all landmarks so we can get access to each by just using this landmark value. Let's just pass this in. And now we won't be able to run because we know for a fact that landmark detail has some errors. But now landmark detail does have access to a landmark. So if we scroll down, now you see here it says in the landmark detail file, pass the required data to your custom type. So now we're going to start filling this out. So remember map view, come to it. It requires now some type of coordinate. Let's just pass in that coordinate. So we could quickly just click that error button right there and then hit fix, and it will add in the missing part of the parameter. Now we have to put actually what value. So we'll say landmark. I think we have a location coordinate. I'm gonna add that in there. So we're getting that data from whatever is passed in as a landmark here. Now we finally see the circle image error. And are they gonna fix it right now? So it looks like they don't fix this yet, so I'll work with them. We look at the preview, see like that for the map view. Now, if we scroll down, next thing it says is change the container from a V stack to a scroll view, so the user can scroll through the descriptive content and delete the spacer, which you no longer need. So right now we are using a V stack here. Just remember that's how you align elements on the screen, top going down. They want us to change this to a scroll view so that the user can just scroll. So to fix this, you just have to remove this V stack, right? Just hit delete, and let's type in scroll view. That's all you need to do for now. And if we look at the preview for the code that they're mentioning, it's basically doing the same thing. But now the next step is finally call the navigation title modifier to give the navigation bar a title when showing the detail view, and the navigation bar title display mode makes it. So we're gonna add a title to this landmark detail view. Right now they haven't handled circle image yet, so you might still be seeing an error here. You won't be able to run it until they do. So let's just take our time with them. So the next thing, so what they're saying now is to add a new modifier, and this modifier is just for showing a title, a navigation title. Let's do this. They said pretty much, and look at their code, and you scroll all the way down, and you see that where they added the navigation title modifier, all the way attached to the scroll view. Let's just do the same thing, and then the value that it's gonna show in as a title is the landmark name. So let's scroll down here, and then this is the end of mine right here. So I'll just say dot navigation title, and then for the text I'm gonna say landmark dot name. And they have another modifier here that says navigation bar title display mode. So basically all this modifier does is basically makes it that if you pick, let's type it in first. So add this new one, navigation bar title display mode, and then you can just hit dot after you see that red filling or blue or whatever color you have for yours, and you can click either, you can make the title be either inline, or make inline is basically the small version, or you can make it large, which would be the big version of the title. And now we can scroll down here, and then for the previews, let's just add in a quick one for this. So say fix, and let's just give it some random landmarks from the landmarks array we have. I'll say 0. You don't have to use 0 here, you can pick like 1, 2 or so. Now if we scroll up, oh, they actually didn't add this in here. So for circle image, they actually didn't add in the landmark image, so let's just do the same. So here we'll type in image, and then remember landmark has a property on it for image, so say landmark.image. Let's see that there. Now our view is pretty much filled out, our detail view. We are passing in custom properties for the coordinate for the map view. We're passing in a custom image for the circle image, but right now we're still using the same static data that's being displayed, like text. Still the same text, turtle rock, and etc. Let's just look to make sure they didn't change these, and actually they did change these. So let's do the same thing here. So the first thing is where we have turtle rock, which is a name we want to change. We're gonna remember we want to use the model for this. So we'll say landmark name, and then for the park, we only use the park, so we'll say landmark park. And then for the state, instead of everything being California, let's change it to landmark state. Now the next two parts are pretty much you say about and landmark the name. So we're gonna leave this about part right here. This is the part where we want to change. We don't want it to always be Turtle Rock, but we always want it to say like about, like starting at the starting point. So I hit these backslash first, then I'll make these two braces here. And then inside here, this is where we're gonna use our variable. So we'll say landmark dot name again. And then for the description, we don't want to just make it be some basic description. So we'll say landmark dot description. So now when we look at the preview for this, we won't always just see Turtle Rock anymore. We'll see the data based on whatever one we clicked on. So now if we open Canvas, we load previews. And if when we see the list, oh, we're just looking at just a specific list right now. But you notice how much more data we're seeing, like about Turtle Rock, we're actually seeing the description right here. So we're actually getting some of that data. So instead of doing it just this way though, let's hide the canvas for a second. And let's maximize this. And we're gonna go back to landmark list. And we're gonna load a preview from here. That way we can see entire list and we can click on them and we can see the detail view. So hit open the canvas again. And now you'll see an array of all of them. And if you click on say Turtle Rock, you see the information for Turtle Rock, etc. If you click on Silver Salmon Creek, you see the Silver Salmon Creek. You notice the location does change. We have a new image and the description here is also different, as well as the state and etc. Let's just try some other ones, say maybe this one. Different image. We also have a different maps reflected in the back, and we have different detailed information here. So this looks. So let's minimize this Xcode again. Now inside here where we actually, let's close this file, landmark detail file. And now we'll scroll down and the next portion is go back to the landmark list, what we just did, and verify that it shows you the correct landmarks when you navigate from the list. So we just did this, so let's just continue. Now the last part, well, the section 8, it says generate previews dynamically. So it says next you'll render previews of the list view for different device configurations. So the first one says by default previews render at the size of the device in active. So I am using a active scheme. I'm using the iPhone 15 Pro or something like that. So that's why I'm seeing this as my preview. Now it says you can render for different devices by changing the target or by overriding the device in the canvas. Basically, all they're saying is if you want to see a different type of iPhone used for your simulator, specify that. So now let's scroll down. Now it says change the device selector to make the preview display an iPad. So we're going to look at how it looks for an iPad. It says in portrait orientation, the navigation. This shows like how you do that. All right, so let's scroll down. It says change the device selector to make the preview display an iPad. In portrait orientation, navigation split view displays a detail pane by default. Let's try with, give it a sec while the preview loads. It might take some time. You see the spinning, that's how you know the preview is doing some work behind. It might just be taking some time. So preparing iPad simulator. And yours might take longer, it might take faster, it just depends. So while that does that, scroll down and it says change the device selector to make preview display on iPad. And all we had to do was do that is just hit this drop down menu here and then select a different iPad device or whichever device you want to use. Now if we scroll down, it says tap the toolbar button to review the sidebar. So we're going to be working heavily with the iPad. So it looks like we do have to wait for this to finish displaying so we can see the simulator. So let's give this a second. I'll actually hide it now and then let's reopen it. See if maybe we can see it more faster for this display. Ah, nice. So now we can see pretty much an iPad version of this. Looks like we can also change whatever device you want to use from this drop down too. So you can either change it from here and then select an iPad or an iPhone, or if you're using the simulator, you can hit it here and select the device that you want. Now it says, tap the toolbar button to reveal the sidebar and try navigating to one of the landmarks. So the toolbar button is pretty much this here right here. So let's just click this. And you see, we see the different lists. So for the iPad, it's like a different experience versus the iPhone, as you can see. And now it says tap the toolbar to reveal the sidebar. Try navigating to one of the landmarks. Let's try, we always tap Turtle Rock. So let's try St. Mary's Lake. And you see, we do see pretty much this detailed view does appear. But it's a much different experience versus the iOS. So now for the next thing, it says in the canvas, select the device setting and enable landscape left orientation. All right, so inside here, in landscape orientation, the navigation split view displays the sidebar and detail pane side by side. So we have to basically just switch this to the landscape mode. All right, let's see. Let me just maximize this a bit. All right, and now to get this, so we hit here, and so we hit these dots here, and then we'll click on orientation. And right now it's inside. I know when I turn this on, you notice that the iPad automatically changed to this landscape mode. If I should hit back portrait again, you'll notice that the iPad kind of stands up, and that's pretty much portrait mode. Same thing again, if you want to see landscape left, you like this. So that's how you can basically change the orientation that you're seeing for your simulator just from the canvas. Let's minimize this again since we got that. And that it takes up a lot of space. So let's hide the canvas for now. And if we scroll down, it says in landscape orientation, blah, blah, blah. Now the next thing it says experiment with different devices and configurations, device settings to see how your views look under other conditions. They could just basically click around. So you see they're kind of highlighted here. You can click around, try different things. Let's do that a bit more. And we'll go inside canvas again. And as our pad loads up, we're gonna hit these dots here. There's no way for me to really zoom in here. So I'm gonna hit these dots, and then you can basically specify what you want. So right now, if I hit colors, if I turn on the color scheme, you'll notice that it switches to dark mode just like that. But if I hit, say, this to switch it back to light mode, it changes it like that. So let's turn these off though. I kind of want to switch back to portrait and light mode. I'll turn off these settings. But by default, portrait mode is the default value. Let's just zoom out a bit. All right, so now let's go back to SwiftUI Tutorials and keyword. Okay. Minimize Xcode first, and then have this. Let's go back down. Got the ready. Now it says experiment with different devices and configurations in device settings to see how your views look under other conditions. So that's pretty much what we just did. So now we have pretty much, now this is a check your understanding portion of it. So let's fill out this portion here. So it says, in addition to lists, which of these types presents a dynamic list of views for a collection? So we could, so group, we haven't used group. I don't remember us using group. Oh yeah, we used group in the previous stream, but we know it's not group. Group makes it that you can basically add like say a specific set of modifiers to multiple different views. So it's not this. And then the other thing is we have for each. For each is a way how you could iterate over an array of stuff, but that might be the closest one to list because you could do it like that. And then we have UI table view. More than likely it's not UI table view because we're doing heavy SwiftUI for this. So with for each, let's see what it says. And yeah, that was it. So it says place a for each instance inside a list or other container type to create a dynamic list. Now the next question is, you can create a list of views from a collection of identifiable elements. I think we can just maximize. Yeah, you can create a list of views from a collection of identifiable elements, right? Remember, we had to add, make it that our, let's hide the kind. We had to make it that our models conform identifiable so that we could use them inside our SwiftUI list. So adding in this kind of protocol conformance. And yeah, you have to scroll up every time I switch in my position. Let's look at the other one. It says, yeah. What approach do you use to adapt a collection of elements that don't conform to identifiable protocol? So they're saying that, like, what if we have a model that doesn't have the identifiable conformance and we want to use it inside a list? So remember when we were trying to, if we go over to landmark list here, originally we couldn't do this. We couldn't just say landmarks. We had to have something like ID here. Remember? And it was like that ID, and that's how we could use it. But after, that's the only way we could use it if landmark, the model, didn't conform to identifiable. But when we made it that it conformed to identifiable, we could just do it like this. So then we know it has to be this one. They said passing a key path along with data to list. Because remember, that's what we had to do before. We had to do something like backslash the ID. And then let's hit submit. And it turns out that one is correct too. Now, the third question is, it says, which type do you use to make rows of a list capable to navigate to another view? And we can just check that. Let's just remove right here, right? I remember what we had to add to make it that we could click on landmark row and then get pushed to a landmark detail was this navigation link, right? We had to wrap it around it. So yes, we had to use the navigation split view, but we only had to use that up here. So we had to have the list inside the navigation split view. But to actually navigate to another screen, we need a navigation link. So let's try this one. And we'll hit submit, and that was the right one. And then let's hit the next one. So it says, which of these choices is not a way to set the device for previewing your views? It's not a way to set the device for previewing your views. So it says, change the simulator selected in active scheme. Okay. Not, remember, make a different choice in canvas settings in Xcode. That might work. Override the previewed device directly in the canvas. And to connect your development device and click the device preview button. Change the simulator selected in active scheme. I think this is right. Make a different choice in canvas settings in Xcode settings. Override the preview device directly in the canvas. I'm still not sure about this one. Connect your development device and click the device preview button. Not sure about this one. So I'm gonna go with override the preview device directly in the canvas. Yeah, we can do that. Make a different choice in canvas. I don't know. I feel like this is the one I'm gonna go with. Connect your development device and click the device. Ooh, it wasn't that one. So it's a previewing on your device is a great way to see it. Oh, so it's not that one. It's a change the simulator selected in active scheme. Make a different choice in canvas settings. Override the preview device properly. Try this one. Either. So it says change the simulator selected in active scheme. Make a different choice in canvas settings. I know we can do this. Make a different choice in canvas settings in Xcode settings. Change the simulator selected in active. Let's try this one. Oh, so it's actually this one. So it says make a different. The correct one is make a different choice in canvas settings in Xcode. You can specify the device to active. Okay. So you can actually specify the device to use active canvas or by previewing directly on your device. No need for a trip to settings. Okay, cool. Now let's just hit next. Basically, like, we finished it up for pretty much this section. Next section that we'll be handling is handling user input. And this is gonna involve pretty much in the landmarks app, we're gonna have a flag, a way how we can favorite different places. So we're gonna be creating a way for that, and it looks like we're gonna use some type of star-shaped button to handle it. That's good because I don't think we've really touched on buttons. So this is like a good starting point. So again, next stream will be focusing heavily on handling user input. Yeah, if you like the stream, definitely like, subscribe, follow, and more to come as we tackle more of these SwiftUI tutorials and building multiple different apps and running unit tests.